how easy it is to get people worked up with promises of what we're going to do in the future, when sometimes we should be put to the test about what did we do in the past, when we held office, what did we actually do with that office, how have we spent our time until now, is it always mañana, is it always tomorrow, what have we done in the past? I was really very surprised how I was left isolated when I stood my ground and said, yes, I am against the death penalty anywhere in the world because it is an act of violence. And any act of violence or any act of bullying has to be condemned. And if we accept any act of violence, even if it is done by the state, done mostly in the United States because incidentally it's politically popular, we justify violence in certain circumstances. There is no such thing as acceptable violence or bullying. I'm not speaking in a vacuum. I was president of the St. Vincent de Paul Council for Youth Clubs. That's how I met my wife. We were both youth leaders. We had 22 youth clubs in the poorest parts of Dublin. But I know from the report, and having read through it this morning, reading about Eileen, that Eileen probably didn't live in the poorest part of Dublin. Eileen was married to a banker, according to the report. Lisa was only married for, was it 2 weeks before the violence began? Unfortunately, we have known this for some time. I spent my time in the European Parliament leading the biggest group on the Development Committee. There's no votes in me working on the Development Committee, but 36,000 children were dying each day. We have it down now to 22,000 children per day. Who are carrying the burden of that? Women, who are no more than chattels for some of the male-dominated societies that we were dealing with. I spent 20 years of my life working on housing and welfare on Dublin City Council. And it is in dealing with those housing cases, as a member of the Housing Committee, the committee I chose to serve on, that I came as a TD for Dublin South Central with my clinic on the Coombe every single Thursday night, face to face, with the individuals who are facing the sort of problems you're mentioning here today. So what can the President do? The President can sign or refer bills if they're not happy, grant a dissolution or not grant a dissolution in certain circumstances, appoint officers of state on the nomination of the government. But the President can meet and greet, network, respond, give example by actions, symbolise, encourage, support, lead. The President can take his or her oath of office seriously. This is why I want this job. I want this job because I want to put my hand on the Bible. Some people don't believe in it. I will swear on the Bible. That's what I will do because I do believe. And I will swear to uphold the Constitution and law and to pursue the welfare of the people. We are at a very important crossroads. The decisions we make now will be important for your generation and for generations to come. Every right brings with it a responsibility for ourselves and to each other. It's very easy for people to talk about rights and social justice, but always somebody else has to pay. We have to take the difficult decisions that bring us through those crossroads so that the proclamation, which didn't just speak of equality, it spoke of prosperity and happiness, can be fulfilled. Why did we have suicide at the height of the Celtic Tiger? There's something fundamentally wrong. We all have to step up to the plate and to deal with that. Now, to conclude, may I say that I was very struck with what Sharon said, that you want to bring visibility. I think the President can help bring visibility to what is a hidden and sometimes not so hidden problem. As President or as MEP, I will take this issue seriously. I will work with you in any way that I can to pursue it. I have dedicated my life to issues of this kind. Who introduced a bill in the Dáil to give votes to prisoners? Do you think anybody would vote for me for introducing a bill to give votes to prisoners? Why did I introduce that bill? Because we will not start reforming prisons until prisoners start being taught to take the responsibilities. And somehow we get away from this issue and we simply recycle people from prisons to go out again and commit violence on people. I have the energy, I have the experience, I have the heart to really take this issue seriously and never to do it in a way that simply tells you what you want to hear. My heart is in this. I will work with you in any way I can, whether I'm president or not.
It's questions from the floor. Maybe you give your name when you want to ask a question. Okay, hands up. Right, lady there with the glasses.
My name is Jacqueline Healy from the National Women's Council of Ireland, and I would like to ask the candidates, if they became president, what major initiatives would they conduct in order to advance women's equality, especially for women who find themselves in vulnerable situations in Ireland? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. The President can address a message to the nation. The President has to avoid getting involved in party political issues. But there are some issues, suicide is one of those issues, for example, that I, from the very beginning, said I would like to work on. I think here is an area, I think the term used by Sharon was to help create a new dialogue. I think here is an area that the President could, by addressing a message to the nation, actually put this issue very high up on the agenda.
I'll take from this side, it'll be really equal. Woman here, brilliant.
Mary Ronayne from Carlow Women's Aid. 2.5 billion is the cost of violence against women currently. We're working at a time of increasing demands on our services with reduced funding. These are services that are largely operated by women, founded by women, for women and children. Not many women in politics, not many women in boardrooms, despite Mary Davis's success, I suppose. So I'm just wondering, what would the candidates do around engaging business and entrepreneurial interests in coming in and supporting us to address the issue of domestic abuse?
Thanks, Mary, for the question. First of all, I'm heavily involved with the Irish Epilepsy Association and Cheeverstown House, and you're competing all the time to get entrepreneurs involved. So let me tell you one thing that I really think we could do. You know the way it used to be? I think Paddy Hillary started the reform of the presidency when he stood up for the office and didn't give a dissolution. When Mary Robinson became president, they said afterwards she would be a very hard act to follow, and President McAleese has shown that she is a very good president. And we have to believe there are things the president can do. And I want you to just please listen to this, because I believe this. People tell you the presidency is not a political office. That is not correct. The presidency is a political office. It's not a party political office. The president is part of the national parliament, the Oireachtas. The national parliament is made up of the Dáil, the Senate and the President. And our national parliament is not functioning as a parliament should. The best thing I could do as president is to try to make sure that it does. Put pressure on Parliament to behave like a Parliament, because I will be part of Parliament. I have the right to summon Parliament if I'm president, one or both houses. Now, let me just finish on this, if I may. I wrote a book called By Dáil Account. I don't know what we spend every year now. It's maybe 50 billion. Let me ask you this. Do you think we waste 5%, 10% maybe of that? You know we do. And we go on year after year, and crudely when we make cuts, we just take 3% there, 4% there. In my book, I set this out because I was chairman of the Public Accounts Committee that reformed the Public Accounts Committee. And I know what I'm talking about. I set it out in my book, last chapter, to bring it to the cutting edge of accountability. We should say, through our Dáil committees, through our Oireachtas committees more correctly, we should say to the department, we're giving you input of 200 million. What will you give us output for that? Under specific headings. And they will say, well, for output, we will give you, so much facilities. And then you say, if we get that output, what will be the outcome? Tell us what the outcome will be. Will violence be reduced? And they say, yes, we commit to that. And then you bring them back before the Dáil committee at the end of the year and you say, we gave you 200 million from the taxpayer. You gave us this output. Did we get the number of whatever it is you said? Then did we get the outcome? We do not have accountability to our Parliament. We do not have that accountability. Okay. If we did, we could use the resources to address the issues. This is not impossible. This can be done, and our President can play a role in that. That's one way to bring the entrepreneurial spirit to effective use. Thank you.
My name is Conal Burke from the Mayo Women's Support Services. I would like to ask the candidates, it's a well-recognised fact within the domestic violence services that children are victims of domestic violence as much as the women, and this document certainly supports that. As potential leaders of this state, what will you do to protect the children that live in domestic violence and are affected by it?
Thanks for the question, Carmel. First of all, I will encourage the Oireachtas to bring forward the legislation for the protection of children. The legislation that will give us the referendum to put the protection of children into the Constitution. At present, for example, according to a discussion I had recently with the Minister for Children and Youth Affairs, Frances Fitzgerald, she tells me there are a growing number of children in foster care who want to be adopted, for example, but they have no right to do that. So what I want to do as president is for once and for all to persuade the Oireachtas to use my moral authority as a direct mandate to bring forward the referendum, to put into the Constitution the wording to give the children that constitutional right.